30. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, we're live. We're live. We're live. All right. Thank you so much. Welcome back to Hope Chat Live, the official podcast for Hope Magazine. I'm Cheryl Pullins, editor-in-chief of Hope Magazine, where we celebrate stories that inspire, inform, and remind us that hope has the power to transform every season of life. And each episode, we sit down with remarkable leaders, creators, entrepreneurs, authors, artists, change makers, taste makers, and whose journey encourage us to live with greater purpose, courage, and possibility. And today, I'm joined by the fabulous, fiery Miss Demi Austin Thomas. She is here it says she's a midlife reinvention and identity reconstruction coach, but I also saw on her Instagram that she's spicy. So we're gonna we're gonna let her be spicy today. She's a speaker, author, and executive director of the Be Empowered Incorporated, with more than 16 years of coaching experience. Demi helps women break free from limiting beliefs, reclaim their voices, and create lives that reflect who they are now. She's a former NBC Texas Today correspondent and the author of Burn the Rules, Redefine Midlife. And today we're going to talk about what happens when a woman realizes the identity she has carried for years no longer fits the life she wants to live. Demi, welcome to Hope Chat Live.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Cheryl. I'm so excited. This is such a great conversation and such a great conversation to have with you. So I've been anticipating and excited about the moment and the conversation today.
Awesome. Me too. Me too. I was reading a few things on your website, and one of the things jumped out at me that we're going to get into in a little bit is identity grief. But before we talk about that, I have a question around recognizing when you're even in some type of transition or shift, because many women, they reach midlife looking as if they have everything together, while quietly knowing that something no longer fits. So what does this usually feel like or look like? Or, how can you help women kind of identify that?
Cheryl, it kind of cut out a little bit. Can you repeat that question one more time? It kind of cut out just a
Yeah.
little bit. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. It says, I said that many women reach midlife and they look as if they have everything together.
Yes.
However, quietly, they know that something no longer fits. And I was asking, what does that realization kind of look like or feel like? And if you can kind of help women identify that within themselves.
Yeah. Well, that's such a really good question. So I'd like to start with, I think that a lot of midlife women right now are sitting in the crossroads of their midlife. And really asking themselves questions about who I am today. What do I want today? What do I want today in my life? And what in their life is no longer fulfilling? I think that there are a lot of women who are sitting in that space of unfulfillment. I know all too well what that feels like because I was there. But I think that identity, what that is really identity disruption. That really is the nudge. That's something that you've attached to your identity is no longer the same. You're no longer that person. And so that could look like from a woman who has always use the example of, I'm a soccer mom, I'm a volleyball mom, I'm a wife. And then somewhere along the way in your life has now shifted. Your children are no longer, playing soccer, but now they are adults and they have graduated college and now they are living their own lives. And so the capacity of how they needed mom as the soccer mom, they no longer need that person. They need you, but they just don't need you in that different space. And or for women who have gone or experienced divorce in their life. And so now they find themselves no longer as a wife, but who am I now? And so I think that with that nudge of unfulfillment, it leads you to asking deeper questions of, who am I? What do I want in this chapter of my life? And how do I go after it? And I think that a lot of women right now are kind of sitting in that space of identity disruption, but also identity grief and grieving who they were once before.
Oh, yeah. So, as you were talking, my life is flashing before my eyes
Oh, yeah.
because I went back. It immediately took me back. When you said identity disruption, I totally related to that because it took me back a long time ago. It took me all the way back 26 years when my identity was disrupted because of my marriage. I was going through a really nasty public divorce because
Mhm.
my husband at the time, he was pastor, and we're living this out fully in front of everyone. And I remember feeling the disruption of no longer being a pastor's wife, that
Mm,
identity that I had lived for 14 years prior, that was now disrupted. And also even in my way of being a mom, because we went through a lot with regard to who was going to have the children when.
mhm.
That was a whole situation.
Yeah.
So I can really identify with that identity disruption, and also the grief. So talk to us about the grief.
Well, grief, I think many times we like to look at it as grief as being the loss of someone. But the grief that we experience in life, I think that it's not just the loss of someone, but it can be the loss of something in our life. And it can
Mm-hmm.
be the identity that we've attached ourselves to. And so
Mm-hmm.
grieving that identity, I remember several years ago, when I was a former correspondent for NBC, I was still holding on to the attachment of introducing myself as a former correspondent for NBC. And I had to ask myself, like, one day I thought, why are you doing this? Like, why? And it's the fear of, am I no longer going to be accepted? Am I no longer going to be
Mm-hmm.
considered valuable? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of women are sitting in these spaces of grieving their identities, who they were before, because the reality is it's you're sitting in the space of value and worth and acceptance
Yes.
and
Yes.
approval.
Yes.
And then if
Mm-hmm.
you're not careful and if you are not self-aware, then you will find yourself living in the space of performance and or decorating your life with
Mm.
more accolades to prove your worth, to prove your value, to prove the need that you deserve to be accepted. And so the reality is that
Mhm.
you have to be very self aware. You have to be able to speak to the loss. You have to be able to reconcile with that loss. And it doesn't mean that just because I'm no longer a correspondent for NBC, that my value is anything that is dismissed and or minimized. And so I think that what
Mhm.
we have to do as midlife, we have to start being vulnerable. We have to pay attention to the signs because they're certainly there. But then we also have to be open to being vulnerable, to saying, you know what, that identity, I'm no longer that person. I've served in
Mhm.
that space as first lady
Mhm.
or, being in whatever that role of that capacity is that you served well in it. And then giving yourself permission to create a new version of yourself in this new identity space or this new identity work that you get to do with yourself. And so I think that grief is real. I think that we have a
Mhm.
responsibility to honor that grief. But what I encourage women to do is to not stay there
Mhm.
because it's so
Mhm.
easy to get stuck in the replaying of those roles of experiencing that loss of grief, that loss of that identity.
Mhm. Yeah, it took me a very long time. It took me close to a decade to
Mhm.
really work through, because I went through. Now that I think about it, I went through real grief stages.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to say that, I think that many people think that, grief is grief, but there are stages to grief. I mean, you just mentioned of how, you went through, reconciling with the loss of no longer being the first lady that's attached to this, the pastor, the church, and how the perception of things, right? And there is anger that comes along with that. There's denial that comes with that. There's sadness, there's loneliness. And we have to we have to be better to ourselves to really allow ourselves to walk through those stages of grief. That is how you honor it. That is how you reconcile with it. But that is also how you're able to really compartmentalize it and to really give it its own space, if that makes sense, so that you can truly be free and having clarity in who you are in this chapter of your life.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So, Demi, you're doing this work in the world, which is absolutely beautiful. How did you get here?
This really, honestly, can we talk about it? Because
absolutely, we can.
Listen, I was not like just stumbling upon like, oh, I'm going to be an identity reconstruction coach. Like, no, this was definitely not in my wheelhouse. I think this definitely came from just my own personal experience, right? Of me working through, I will say, the last 7 years of my life, I have completely reinvented my entire life. And reinvention, I think that many people like to think about reinvention as just a physical thing. Like physically, you can reinvent your life, your wardrobe. But no, this was my own walk of my own inner healing journey. And then I realized that, oh my gosh, I've done the work, but I don't want to just focus primarily on reinvention. I want to focus more so and specifically on the identity reconstruction, because I think when you have reinvented your life, you've done a great job of reinventing your life physically. You can have the best boobs, the best butt. You can be the most well-dressed person, right? Physically. But at the end of the day, you can still feel lonely, and you can still feel rejected, and you can still feel abandoned. And still need that sense of acceptance and validation, and find yourself still performing and pretending. But once you know who you are in your identity, your whole world shifts. You shift your world, your mindset, and the perception of how you see yourself literally changes. And so that was very important to me as a woman, is that I didn't want to just reinvent my life. I wanted to control and change everything about my life and how I saw my life, because I've also been one who has struggled with validation and acceptance and approval my entire life. I didn't want to be a people pleaser. I think it's so important to get to the root of your why. And so that is where my work started. And that is why I became so passionate about really helping midlife women, particularly midlife women who are sitting in these spaces of the crossroads, because being in the crosses of your life, it makes you feel like maybe my life is over. Oh, if I would have did this 30 years ago. You start replaying events in your life, and you thinking about the woulda, shoulda, couldas. And so in this space of reinvention and reconstruction, I really wanted women to understand the importance of no, you deserve to answer the why of the spaces of your life that you feel unfulfilled in, and you deserve to give yourself an act 2. For some people, it's an act 3, but giving themselves permission in this season of their lives to choose freedom, to choose peace, to choose self-expression and style expression in this season of their lives, of their midlife year.
Yeah. So you mentioned 3 words that I talk about, but I think about a lot, and that's validation, permission, and acceptance.
Yeah.
And this is just how I think. What do you think contributes to the incessant need for women in particular, and even in midlife, to seek validation, permission, and acceptance?
Yeah. I think a lot of it has to do with childhood experiences, to be very honest with you. I think it really goes back to understanding how and why you are wired the way you are. I don't think that people just wake up one day and they just decide that I need validation, acceptance, and approval. It comes from something. And I think from my own work of what I have seen in just coaching my clients, it has been rooted
Mhm.
in childhood experiences. I think that women, Black women particularly, the eldest child syndrome is very real for a lot of women,
Mm.
particularly, again, Black women, of where we have had to make so many self sacrifices, where we have always had to be in survival mode. And, we've always had to perform higher just to be acknowledged, just to be considered valuable. And so I do think a lot of these, um, that sense of validation and acceptance and approval does go back to just childhood experiences and or experiences in your life where your spirit was broken, word curses that were formed or spoken over you, and
Yeah.
your perception of how you chose to see yourself in that moment shifted. And these are
Mhm.
conversations and these are experiences that deserve to be honored. These are stories that deserve to be told and heard. And I think we have to be much more mindful of going back to really acknowledging those hurtful spaces, things that we have internalized. I think that a lot
Mhm.
of women have internalized a lot of bad life experiences and they have not given themselves permission to speak to them, to acknowledge the people who hurt them or violated them, but to also
Mhm.
take their lives back from those experiences as well.
Mm. Wow, that's really good. So when you say take your life back from those experiences, what is that? What how would you say that to a woman in terms of someone you're coaching? Like what would you say to her?
Well, the first thing I would ask her is, where does she believe that she is powerful and where is your power? Because many times what we do is we give more power to those experiences and to other people, and not
Mhm.
realizing that we have the ability to change the trajectory of our lives with our own words and with our own actions, but also how you see yourself. Because if you see yourself less than and you see yourself not having any worth or valuable, or any value, then it creates and gives more power to other people and to those other experiences. When you have the ability to be able to change your words, but also to change the perception of how you see yourself. If you see yourself less than, if you see yourself as being at the low end of the total pole and not worthy, not powerful, not valuable, then you've lost your sense of identity in that. You've lost your sense of self in that. So I think it's very important for any woman to be able to see and acknowledge their self worth.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, that's really really good. Gosh, this is such a juicy conversation because I just it's such a reflection of my journey, and that I've been on for most of my life, if you will.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Me
you
too.
know,
Me too. Me too.
yeah, yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about self abandonment. Yeah,
Listen.
I want I want to talk a little bit about that and the idea of over giving and all, like talk to us about that, Demi, because we need to hear you.
Yeah. Listen, this is an area that I struggled in. And
Mm,
I struggled in this area of self abandonment because I didn't know, one, my value, but I was also looking for validation and acceptance and approval. And I trained myself to believe the lie that if I kept giving and showing up for everyone else and I prioritized everyone else over myself, that
mm,
would give me the love that I needed. It would give
mm.
me the validation that I needed, the approval, the acceptance. And then I had an aha moment. And I talk about this, and sometimes I'm condemned for it, and I don't care. But probably about 5 years ago, Cheryl, I did a no contact with my family, mainly my mother. And I have always been the go to person. I think probably since I knew I had a calling on my life to be an advice giver at 8 years old, when I told Giovanni to meet me on the park on the blacktop, honey. And if she wanted to get Levi Brown's attention, she needed to wear her yellow dress with her pink and red ribbons and her black patent shoes. I always knew. And when she did that and Levi Brown met me and I had that influence to be able to connect them at the blacktop, I said, I must be doing something, right?
Right.
And so I just realized with my life, I said, in order for me to have complete fulfillment in my life, it's going to have to start with making very honest and hard decisions. And so about 5 years ago, I decided that it was important for me to honor my yes to myself. Um, I was always giving yeses to everyone else. Can you do this? Yes. Breaking my neck for other people. And then I realized this is not healthy. This is not healthy. I'm not honoring my time. I'm not honoring my yes. I'm not honoring my value. And this is when I really started inserting what I think many of us as women and midlife women really struggle with, and that is boundaries and saying no without having to explain. So during my no contact, it started with my mother. And I know that could be so taboo with Black folks, honey, because Black women are like, girl, you only get one mama. And I'm like, you only get one me. You can only get one mama, but you only get one me. And so it was important for me to honor my voice and just acknowledging how I felt, because many times, family will but they will run you down. But we also give people permission to do that. And so we train people on how to treat us every single day. And I realized, Demi, you can't really be mad at them because you trained them to need you. You trained them to call you. And I realized that I didn't have boundaries in my life. And this is something that I think that every woman needs to implement, is honoring her time, honoring her value, but also honoring boundaries. Some people will need hard boundaries. Some people will need those soft and subtle boundaries, but you have a responsibility to advocate for yourself. And abandonment only happens when you're not speaking up for yourself, when you are not showing up for yourself, and you're doing yourself a disservice to not consider you, to not think of you. We are often mindful of everyone else, but we we don't always reciprocate that mindfulness towards ourselves. We give grace to everyone else, but we are not always kind and grace giving to ourselves. And so I think that a lot of women are sitting in that space of abandonment. And abandonment will only occur unless, or will never stop until you choose to own your yes and to stop seeking validation. We have to be mindful of our behaviors and our habits.
And that's juicy, because being mindful of behaviors and habits and how we even talk to ourselves.
Yes.
So, starting with ourselves first, because over time, then people start to see and know that, oh, wait a minute. She now has boundaries, she now, and people, I saw a video a couple weeks ago, and it was Oprah Winfrey. She was talking, somebody was interviewing her, one of those street interviews, and she said that someone had said to her at one point, you're full of yourself. And she said over the years she realized, she's like, I absolutely am full of me.
Absolutely. And I'm going to tell you, that is literally the mindset shift that I had to make. That is literally the mindset shift that I often share with my clients. You have to consider you. You have to think of you. You have to own you. You have to feel you. You know what I mean? Because we what we don't want, or I think that there's this fear that we're not going to be accepted. People are going to perceive us differently, and they should. And I am not the same person, and you are not the same person, and you do have boundaries in place, and those boundaries are not for them. Those boundaries are for you. And so I think that once we shift our mindset in how and knowing that we deserve to be full of ourselves, not from a place of arrogance, not from a place of pride, but it's from a place of love. Okay. I love myself. so much that I am
Mm,
full of myself, that I am absolutely
mhm.
betting on myself. And I think one of the things that I often share with my clients is that be prepared, because once you start creating this self-awareness, once you have that self-awareness moment and you start now implementing the new golden rules of you, don't
Yeah.
expect people to applaud you. Don't expect people to be excited for you, because they're not. But remember, this isn't about them. This is about you.
Mm,
And so
mm,
once you can understand the gravity of understanding that your value deserves boundaries, your whole
mm,
life changes, your whole mindset,
mhm.
your how you see yourself. You start walking with your back a little bit more straighter,
Yeah,
your
yeah,
smile
yeah.
comes back. You
Mhm,
can sit in the
mhm,
ownership of knowing that I am showing up to serve myself better, because you deserve better. So that is probably the biggest excitement when I get a chance to talk with clients and seeing their minds go, like they start thinking, because they're like, oh, I didn't consider myself. Oh,
right, right.
I get to do that now. You absolutely do. Yes.
Mhm,
So I
mhm,
love just being able to see that light bulb just come on, and women get it. I'm telling you, boundaries will save your life, save your relationships. I believe you have boundaries with in your personal life. I have boundaries in my marriage. I have boundaries with my children. I have boundaries in my friendships and my relationships, and professionally. I think it's easier
mhm,
for us in some ways to implement boundaries in our professional lives, because we feel like, oh, I got to do what I got to do, right, to keep the job. But no, 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 no. You have a responsibility to be able to train these people to be able to say, don't call
mhm.
me after 5 o'clock
Right, right.
because I'm working. And people will only do what you allow them to.
That's true. Truth.
Yeah,
Truth. Most
yeah.
definitely. Most definitely. I can sit here and have this conversation, well into tomorrow at least, because I think it's valuable conversation. I think it's a relevant conversation. So many of us have conditioned our own selves, to allow what we allow, but also I think that part of it is very generational too, that it's been
Ooh.
passed down to us. It's like in our genome somewhere along the way that we have to allow a lot of things that we allow. So, we could take many offshoots from this conversation in a lot of different ways. So, you gave us a lot to chew on today, Demi.
Well, I have loved this conversation, and you are so right. I just want to absolutely say this, because I know we're getting ready to close, because you were just in the vein of something that I definitely wanted to add. I think that as women, I think that we have to be mindful at going back to how our mothers were raised and the sacrifices that they've made in their lives. And I
Mhm,
think for many women, there is this idea of self sacrificing. That we
mhm,
feel like we have to make because we saw our mothers make those sacrifices. And I feel like for my own life, and one thing that I share with my clients is that you get to be your own kind of woman in this chapter of your life. You get to decide who she is. You get to decide what you want, what works for you and what doesn't work for you.
mhm,
And so
mhm,
that is the gift I believe that we get in midlife, is to be able to know there's some things that I love about my mom and what she did and her mama and all of those things, but I get to choose to be. I don't want to have the
mhm.
one size fits all kind of womanhood. I want to have the one that fits me in this chapter of my life, that brings peace and joy and fulfillment and freedom in every area of it.
No, that's good. That's good. I absolutely love that. So, what's one thing as we wrap up? What's one thing that someone watching this live or watching the replay or listening to the podcast, what's one thing once they're finished? What's their next move?
Once I say that again, you said once
What's
it finished.
once the live is over or they're finished watching the replay, or they listen to the podcast down the road, what's one thing they can do as soon as they finish listening?
Well, the one thing that I encourage any woman who is listening to this podcast today is to write down 3 areas in your life where you feel unfulfilled. And that is
Mm,
important, because I think we can talk about it all day long, but until you can actually speak to it, you have to
mhm,
know. where you're unhappy at. And then from there, take one thing from that list and work to find resolution in terms of peace, fulfillment, and joy in it. What is it about your life that you want to change? Those are the things that I believe that are super important in terms of questions of what people or women, what many women are looking for right now. So we have to
Mm-hmm.
be aware of where our unfulfillment is in our lives and then do
That's a
something about it.
great place to start. And it's within yourself that you can explore for you. So thank you, Demi. Thank you for your time
Thank
today. How can
you.
people stay connected? I know I have your website up here, DemiAustinThomas.com. And is there any place else that you want people to connect with you?
Yeah. So they can absolutely connect with me online at DemiAustinThomas.com. Thank you for sharing that, Cheryl. But they can also find me on Instagram at DemiAustinThomas.com or Demi Austin Thomas, as well as on Facebook. And once you go to DemiAustinThomas.com, join and be a part of my Sizzle tribe. I have a book called Sizzle Boldly, 7 Rule Breaking Steps to Own Your Fire and Redefine Midlife. I host a series of events throughout the year. We're getting ready for our Own Your Bold Fire event this year, which is about midlife reinvention. I would love for you to be a part of my community and tribe. So that's how you can find me.
There you go. Thank you so much. An invitation to be part of her community, her tribe. In particular, if you are a midlife woman and you are ready to own your fire. Own your fire. Thank you, Demi. Thank you so much. It has been my pleasure to host you here. And I just want to thank Demi for joining me and for giving language to an experience that women are quietly carrying. And we have been for a very long time. And today's conversation reminds us that we can honor the lives that we've built while giving ourselves permission to acknowledge what has changed, listen to our own voice, and make intentional choices about what comes next. And now you have a resource with Demi where you can make that happen. So thank you for joining another episode of Hope Chat Live. If today's conversation encouraged you, be sure to subscribe, share this episode with someone who could benefit from it, and visit Hope Magazine at myhopemag.com for more inspiring stories, meaningful conversations, and resources designed to help you live well. Until next time, keep living boldly, brilliantly, and beautifully. I'm Cheryl Pullins. I'll see you next time.